Recognizes gentlelady from California, Ms. Barragan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cause of climate change, one of the main causes of climate change, is the greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels. The solution, I believe, is to reduce and eventually end our reliance on fossil fuels. This must be the focus of the 28th United Nations Climate Conference that will begin later this week. However, the Republican message today around energy and climate is focused on increased fossil fuel production and liquefied natural gas exports. I'd like to enter into the record a preprint copy of a research study by Dr. Robert Howarth at Cornell, which shows that when accounting for emissions across the entire natural gas supply chain, LNG exported to and burned in other countries is worse than coal for the climate. Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so
Thank
ordered.
you.
We'll look at that.
I wanted to enter into the record.
Without objection, so
Thank
ordered.
you. Dr. Hosker, is reducing U.S. and global reliance on fossil fuels critical for any successful climate strategy?
Yes, as I described earlier, every IPCC scenario for meeting our climate goals requires sharp reductions.
And Dr. Hosker, the world is off track to avoid the worst effects of climate change. The U.S. has made progress. We expect a 3% decline in emissions this year, but we need 6% reductions each year through 2030 to meet our commitment under the Paris Climate Accord. Much of our reduction so far has come from the power sector, while transportation is now the largest emission source. Is a transition to zero emissions vehicles a critical part of any path to meet U.S. climate goals?
Yes, the transportation sector is critical, and if you look at the sectoral breakdown that I put in my written testimony, what's really fascinating about it is that the power sector has carried almost the entire burden of our reductions to date from that 2007 peak. Residential, industrial, commercial, agriculture, transportation have almost all been flat or just varying, fluctuating a little bit. So yes, we need to get the other sectors on downward trajectories as well.
Great. The EPA has proposed new regulations for cars and trucks that will accelerate the transition to zero emissions vehicles. How important is it that the EPA finalize the strongest possible rules for emissions reductions from cars and trucks?
Yes, a smart, effective regulatory policy combined with the incentives of the IRA is, in my mind, the best road forward.
Thank you. Dr. Hosker, the Department of Energy has proposed several long overdue updates to efficiency standards for washing machines, dryers, water heaters, stoves, and other appliances. These standards will reduce emissions and save Americans money on their energy bills. How important are these standards for the U.S. to meet its climate goals?
Yes, efficiency standards have a long history, and DOE has done an excellent job over the years of creating these regulations for efficiency that save customers money, save energy, and reduce greenhouse gases. And I'm sure this next wave will be equally effective, and again, will combine with IRA incentives for things like heat pumps.
Thank you. My last question is, recently the United States and China announced a new joint commitments on climate, including a goal to triple global renewable energy capacity by 2030. Does U.S. leadership on climate, through investments in the Inflation Reduction Act, which you just mentioned, help to bring countries like China and India to the table for these commitments?
Yes, I think by showing leadership on climate domestically, that puts us in a much stronger position to work with other countries also to ensure that they set good targets and meet them.
Well, thank you. Is there anything that you want to add that you maybe haven't been asked about today?
Can I take a rain check on that?
Okay, sounds good. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber, for 5 minutes.